Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Finance Committee agenda, where we have 4 items. Okay, all members of council participates. I am the chairman of this committee. Madam Clerk, our first item is approval of minutes.
Just of May 19th.
May 19th. What is the pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second. Any deletions, additions, or discussion?
Commendations to the clerk and her staff.
Hey, let the record reflect. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Now we come to the interesting part of this agenda, the FY '23 budget. Mr. Guy, you gonna make some enemies today? So, I got you, okay?
We're all friends today, right?
Yeah, you always my friend. Go right ahead, sir.
Here's a trick to that. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the overview for the budget, and today we're going to go through the detail for the offices and departments. Just to help coordinate the actions of council, these are the items that we're asking council to approve at the end of the presentation. There are 3 ordinances that are on the agenda for today, and then there's also 3 directives related to the budgets. So we're going to look at each of the areas that are in the county. The first one are our council agencies. The local accommodations tax funds are up on the spending side, and that's driven by the revenues. And the formulas that we use to make the contributions to municipalities and the Visitors Bureau are the large increases in that budget. The Air Service Development Fund is up due to revenues, and that provides additional funding to the Aviation Authority and for county projects. The transit budget is up to start repaying the debt that we issued last fall. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them and interrupt when we're talking about it, or I leave that up to your discretion.
All right, would you rather wait, or you rather take them as they go along?
I would take them as they come along.
If you raise your hand, I'll recognize you, and then you can ask Mr. Gall a question. Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on to the elected officials, the auditor's budget is up. This is due to some one-time funding to digitize some of their records. The sheriff's law enforcement budget is higher. That includes one-time funding to replace body cameras. The sheriff's budget reflects current trends of staffing, and as a result, there is a higher budgeted personnel savings in their budget.
Body cameras.
Yes, sir.
Don't the state have some kind of program where they furnish these body cameras for municipalities? I think our state legislator, when they voted on it, you might want to check, because I think
The county has received some funding for body cameras. I think some of it is being used by the solicitor to provide hardware, and council approved a directive several years ago to apply that to IT costs. I'm not sure that they're available to us to replace them for the law enforcement, but we certainly can check on that.
all right. So are they just worn out, or are they just requesting new ones for new hires? Is anybody from the sheriff can answer that question?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, these cameras they're actually, the ones we currently use are 5 years old. They need replacements. The technology is outdated, and they just can't be repaired.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the Adult Detention Center is another budget that we use current trends to set the overall personnel budget, and it has higher budgeted personnel savings. There was some shifting of positions to the juvenile facility to ensure that that had the appropriate staffing to open it. Okay. The next area are the appointed officials. Elections budget is up largely due to adding contracted temporaries to handle the new legislation that just came down about in-person absentee voting sites. The library's budget is up. This continues the expansion that began with the 2016 referendum. Additional personnel are being funded as new facilities are opening up. The library is using some of their fund balance to handle some of the one-time needs. As part of state legislation for the library, council is required to approve the library's entire budget. As you look on that second line, that $31 million is included in the county budget, but there are other revenues that they receive. So the ask is at the end of this presentation to approve the library's budget also. Okay, moving to the administrator. The highlights are in the debt service fund. This is also an increase for issuing the debt in 21. In non-departmental, we fund some transfers of funds to outside the general fund. The amount of money that we're putting to your fleet is up a little bit for next year. And based on moving into the new facility, we're hoping that Deotis would be able to fund more of their function through revenues that they generate. So for the Community Services Directorate, the largest change is in the Greenbelts program. And this is due to the revenues going up from the transportation sales tax that allows more programs to be funded next year. The Finance Directorate, the Economic Development budget is down. That's due to the savings that we had from refinancing a bond last year. For employee benefits, that budget is up. The state has passed through an increase for the employer share of the health insurance costs. There is no increase on the employee premiums next year. Revenue collections budget is up due to some of the revenues that they collect, and that gives a little more flexibility with their budget to help the general fund. In general services, there are several departments that had some positions reprogrammed to deal with workload. Those include building inspections. Facilities had a few to open up new facilities. And the funding for maintenance projects that last year we paid some out of ARPA funds has been restored to the general fund at about $6 million a year. The parking garage's budget is down. This is due to one-time funding that we use for some of their maintenance projects. Planning and zoning is another department that had positions reprogrammed to address workload. In technology services, the maintenance projects or maintenance costs that they have and the projects that they do for departments are up this year. For radio communications, their budget is down due to the one-time replacement of a radio tower in last year's budget. For public safety, for Allendale, they have increased funding to replace some of their safety equipment, and it also includes a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour. The Biologic Science Center is a new function for next year. Dispatch is a department that's had some reprogrammed positions to help them deal with their workload. Emergency management funds the volunteer rescue squad, and there's a higher amount for replacement capital for them this year. And EMS's budget is up, although it does have a higher budgeted personnel savings built into it based on current trends. Continuing public safety, the county has some contracts for some of the donor holes or in the unincorporated areas. One of them is with the C&B Volunteer Fire Department, and they've asked for the maximum millage increase again this year to try to improve the services from part-time to full-time. This is going to be a long-term approach before they would be able to reach that full-time level. The second fire district is the East Cooper Fire District. We have a contract with the town of Mount Pleasant, and there's a 2.5% increase built into that each year. For public services, the Environmental Management Fund is up. There's an increase in contracted costs related to the privatization. There's savings in the personnel side. There's also some reduction in funding for capital projects, and we'll talk about their capital improvement plan on the next slide. Fleet operations budget is up. That's the other side of the general fund's increase in replacing general fund vehicles. There's also an increase in fleet maintenance and fuel costs going into next year. And Public Works is one of the larger customers that Fleet has, and most of their increase is related to the fuel cost. In the Transportation Sales Tax Roads Program, this budget is also up to pay debt service for funds that we borrowed last year. This is in the Environmental Management Capital Improvement Plan. It's largely unchanged from the prior year, although there's a little bit of a change in priority as far as the infrastructure at the front of the facility for the convenience center and asking to shift that to the second phase of the compost project. There's also some funds coming from their operating fund to be able to accomplish that $5.8 million. I think there's a more comprehensive planning process that encompasses the capital improvement plan and their operating plan that the department is working on. As part of the transportation sales tax, it requires a 5-year plan of expenditures to be approved by council each year. This combines the first and the second sales tax. If you're looking at the sales tax revenues, you'll see it's highlighted out in fiscal year 27. We're anticipating that the first sales tax will reach its 1.3 billion revenue threshold about 3 years before the time threshold ends in May of 2030. When you're looking at the revenue side, you see that line for the bonds, that the roads program in the second sales tax has about $500 million of borrowing planned, and there's some past the 5 years to accomplish the projects in the second sales tax. That is dependent on a referendum, which I think is now targeted for November of 24. So as part of the budget process, County Council is asked to approve the general fund budgets for the 6 special purpose districts. In reviewing these, nothing came to our attention that we were concerned with. The millage rates were unchanged from the prior year. This slide shows the overall summary of the county's budget. We talked about a couple of weeks ago, no change in the overall authorized positions. This is a summary of the millage rates that's in the county ordinance, and we talked about the 2 fire districts changing for next year. So that concludes the presentation for this evening, and I would turn it over to council.
Okay, any questions or motion? Mr. Werman, and then Mr. Sass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Guile. I just have, you mentioned the phrase higher budgeted personnel savings. I think I know what that means, and I think that refers to the issue that you kind of apprised us all of previously, that built into this budget is sort of an assumption that we would not be filling all the potential positions that we've authorized. That's what that phrase refers to?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and forgive me if I missed this, I just, for my own understanding moving forward, and I understand also that, the assumption that we would ever fill all the FTEs is perhaps an assumption, and maybe not practical, but is there a measure of what that exposure actually is? Or do we have any, I guess that could break down a number of ways, but do y'all have some idea of, like, in theory, what that that increase could possibly be?
So I agree that this is the highest risk that we have in this budget. I don't think we have any way of quantifying it because I don't think we've experienced what's occurring in the workplace right now. But this is the highest dollar amount that we've had in our budget for these anticipated savings.
Okay.
We focused more on finishing this one-year budget, and we did not try to attempt a 5-year plan. But yes, there could be some concerns going forward that we made this year's budget balanced, but we may have difficulties in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Sass?
On the same vein, Mr. Guile, those positions that are unfilled in the sheriff's department, I guess those are mostly mostly in the jail?
Probably about 2/3 of the vacant positions in the sheriff's office are in the detention center,
In the detention
and about a
center?
third in law. Probably 100 in detention, maybe 50 in law as of.
Are those? I guess we're operating without them now. Are those really needed? Or those are we're sure we need those? Or can you expand on that a little bit?
I'm going to defer to the sheriff's office to.
Come up to the mic for me so you can be recorded.
Now I want to make sure we've got enough people working, to do what we need done.
Yes, sir. Actually, we are working at an extreme deficit and a manpower shortage like we've never seen. Law enforcement across the country is experiencing the same thing. But the short answer is we absolutely need the people because unfortunately, our dedicated people are working critical hours. We're especially at the detention center. We are critical with manpower. We have, if we didn't have mandatory overtime and people volunteering to come in and give their time, to work extra, we wouldn't be able to survive right now.
Oh, how long has that existed?
How this has been going on for about a year and a half?
Sir, actually, the jail has actually been running a deficit for a while.
That's what I thought.
But we've had mandatory overtime at the jail for a little over 10 years. So it's not that the work's not being done. People are just having to work more to make up the workload.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Moody? Just don't go nowhere. Somebody might have another question.
A question, Mr. Guile, and an observation, if you don't mind. 2B, the solid waste recycling, when was the last time that fee was adjusted? Top of your head?
15 years ago.
It's still $99?
$99.
Okay. Something this council is going to need to look at in the near future based on what I see projected out. And also, just wanted to thank Ms. Craig. I see her over there. She and I had a very robust discussion about library budgets. This is the new norm for the library, this $30 million deficit, and I've challenged her to find grants. We've got our consent agenda. There's 3 grant items. We've got to find additional sources of revenue for that. We just do. I don't know what the answer is, but everybody loves the library and they do great things, but the mission keeps getting bigger and so does that deficit. So I would challenge Ms. Craig, and she accepted the challenge. So thank you to continue to look for grant monies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so this question is for you, Mr. Gao. So these unfilled positions, when the money goes over, doesn't it go over with a 42% benefit as well too? Is that added into these positions when they're frozen?
Yes, that is taken into account.
Okay. So when this is for you from the sheriff's office. So when y'all pay these folks, y'all pay them time and a half?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you pay them time.
Once they reach their 86, and then it's time and a half after that. Yes, sir.
All right, so it should be a savings on the benefit side, right? Because you're not paying benefits, but is overtime eating up the benefits pay? Is that what the problem is?
We use the same benefit ratio for the entire amount of compensation that we pay, whether it's regular time or overtime. Mm-hmm. I understand that, yeah, we would have to have a higher rate for regular benefits if we didn't build in the overtime. So we're able to smooth that out a little bit more when we include overtime in the base. So we don't really save the benefits as a result of the overtime.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We wouldn't say it. So how much did y'all pay in overtime benefits last year? Can you tell me that? Or can somebody in your staff tell us that?
Let me see, we're working on it right there.
Mr. Pryor.
If we can't get it right now, we can get it for you, Chairman.
So the way we look at personnel is we look at what's paid in total personnel costs by pay period, and we kind of try to look for trends. And we take that and use that to build the budget, add in some increases for merit and longevity, and we really the vacancy savings, that's kind of a plug figure to see if it's reasonable. So I don't know if that helps explain a little bit better how we do some of those shift positions in the sheriff's office, EMS, dispatch. So it's hard to tell, how much you pay in overtime and how that fits in the equation. If you had 20 vacancies last year and this year you got 50, you're going to see shifting out of regular salaries into overtime. Does it change the overall number that much? It might not change it that much.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right, so I'll get back with you on that later. Okay, thank you.
I got your answer for you. Chairman, we, not including fringe, the 1.3, 1.4, we spent roughly 1.4 million. I'm sorry, 44% fringe. We spent 1.4 million at the jail last year.
Yeah, and thank you for the people that does that, because I know it could be, hard on them working all day and then working overtime, when their shift's supposed to be off. So we appreciate that greatly. Just want
Yes, sir.
y'all to know we appreciate law enforcement, but we want to try to see what we can do to help you. Ms.
I have a
Johnson.
question for him.
Don't go nowhere. She's got a question.
Sorry, ma'am.
That's okay, thank you. You were just going to walk a short distance. So you mentioned that,
Please.
you mentioned that the deficit in the employment has kind of existed for about 10 years, maybe?
Ever since we've moved into the new jail, we've actually had a deficit in employees. We've never gotten a fully staffed. We've never been fully staffed at the jail. It has over the last couple of years, given the climate involving law enforcement, it has dropped. That's true. It's gotten worse than it's ever been.
So, and then you also have taken some of your employees and put them in the detention center, the new detention center, right?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. We've moved some people, but we have increased the size of the juvenile detention center staff.
By how many?
That I don't know. I believe.
Okay, well, I'd like to know how many of those full-time employees have you put in the juvenile detention center? And
Yeah, more actually already working in juvenile in the main jail. We just moved some over. It has increased a little bit, but I don't think it's increased substantially as far as making the that big of impact on the already large amount of vacancies we had.
well, I need to tell you that my concern is we've had this shortage in the sheriff's department for about 10 years, according to what you were saying.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this is not due to new circumstances like COVID or people just shifting all over into other areas. It has existed for about 10 years.
Yes, ma'am,
So we
that's
don't have
correct.
an answer to how we're going to fix that shortage that's existed for about 10 years.
Shortage originally began when we built the new jail. We never have gotten to full capacity as far as staffing, and it has consistently gotten worse over the last few years because there's just not as many people going into law enforcement. And again, that's across the board. I mean, you have agencies that have 60% vacancies in large cities because they just don't have people wanting to do the job anymore, which actually lends credence it makes the people that are still there doing the job more impressive because they deal with it. We have people that are working 30 days straight just to get the work done because it's got to be done. They're keeping the people we arrest in jail and keeping us safe. So it has gotten worse over the last few years. That's true, but mostly because of the climate. We just don't have the same interest in law enforcement. It's the same on the law side. We've never carried vacancies for very long on the law side like we do now.
the city of North Charleston, the city of Charleston, Mount Pleasant all have vacancies that would never been there before. It tends to be our vacancies have always been a problem. That's true at the jail, but it has consistently gotten worse over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Okay, thank you, sir, for
Yes, ma'am.
giving me
All
that.
right. Anybody else before we move on?
Prior, I'll
Mr. Moody?
move to approve the fiscal year 23 budget with
Second.
amendments up to third reading.
So you, amendment up to third reading, Ms. Johnson second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Abstention. Before Mr. Guy, before you finish, before you sit down, would you introduce your new staff? I know you have some new people in there. They've been working on this for a whole year, so we want council to know who's responsible for this.
So the budget department consists of 7 individuals. One of them standing behind me. I think everybody knows Loella Smalls, the assistant director.
Yeah, she's the lady that keeps dropping everything.
Really good on cue there. I'm not going to recover, I'm sorry. You guys stand up? Can you stand up?
Sure, I can stand up.
Okay,
Not all y'all at the same time.
I'm having a moment here. You know, as you get old, you forget names when you get put on the spot. Audrey, what's your name?
Porter.
Thank you.
You just
Audrey
like
Parker
numbers.
is our administrative personnel. The next 2 are new and just started with us in August. Mel Gilroy and Lavario Lewis. So, thank you for acknowledging them. The county did just receive the 33rd budget award in the last week or so.
Yes.
Mr.
yes.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You know, not only would I like to commend Mr. Giles and his entire staff, but I wanted to highlight and note once again Loella Small. She's very quiet and she works behind the scenes, but she's a very dedicated worker.
She is.
And pivotal to the success of that office. And I watched her specifically based on some of the information that was being asked, giving that information on cue. So that Mr. Giles could be intelligent in his answers. And so I wanted to just thank her again and applaud her and make certain that we well recognize behind the scenes the hard work that she's doing.
Yes. Okay, anybody else? Thank you. So now, okay, that finishes A through F, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now we move on to item number 3, which is a consent agenda. What is the pledge? You want to take them one by one, or you want to make a motion for
I'll
all?
move to approve A through E.
Second it.
All right, moving second. And any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Item 4 is A through C. What is the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I had some questions from Mr. Dykes about 4B, so if we could move for
Take them one
appro-
at a time?
Yeah, if we move for approval of 4A.
All right, is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Mr. Moody, 4B. Is somebody want to make a motion so we can do discussion?
Move to approve for discussion purposes.
All right, is there a second? Second by Mr. Sass. Now, Mr. Moody, we open for discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Dykes, this project, and I understand the secrecy, but this is a ground-up construction project? Yes, sir. Are the Project Pack 1 and Project Pack developer common ownership? So that is, I'm assuming there's an LLC that's going to own and develop the property, and then you'll have the company that'll move into it and be the operating entity. Are those related ownership groups?
They're actually not. You've got the building owner will build to suit to lease to the PAC 1 project. So you've got a builder that does institutional building who will build, in this case, build this building.
So they're
custom-
that PAC 1 developer will hold the property. They will not sell or turn it over to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know where I'm going with this. Palmetto Commerce Parkway. I mean, when we fill up out there, what are we going to do?
I think about that sometimes. We need another business park, and we need it sooner rather than later. So we are,
exploring some different prospects on that.
So when we've spoken, and you've talked about the lack of inventory in West Ashley or James Island or Lincolnville or wherever, but we've got land that can be built on. So my issue is there are people in West Ashley that would love a $93,000 a year job, and I'm sure James Island and Lincolnville too, that aren't getting on the roads at 8 a.m. to go to North Charleston, funneling in with everybody else, and aren't coming home at the same time as everybody else funneling back out. At some point, if I buy the argument we don't have inventory in some of these outlying areas, okay, but this particular project doesn't need inventory. It just needs ground, and we've got ground. There's TIFs on Sam Rittenberg. There's TIFs on Bees Ferry Road that could cure things with Church Creek. So I just can't support this. I feel like this could go somewhere else. I think we ought to send you back and have you negotiate with those people to look at another place. At some point, we've got to have the courage to say, if you go here, we're going to try to do everything we can to make you successful, but I don't have any money for you. If you go to these other areas, we're going to open up the wallet and try to do what we can to help you. And I just can't support this. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else? All right, there's a motion for approval.
I have a question.
Mr. Sass.
Mr. Dykes, is there a specific reason that it needs to be in that location? Could it be somewhere else?
Not easily, no, sir. It's got to have industrial zoning, and it's got heavy utilities. This is, in fact, there's upwards of $4.5 million in upgrades of utilities that had to occur out there, including about $3.5 million on the electric side. So real robust electricity, ample amount of sewer, water and sewer for the production process. They do injection molding. And so it's hard to do that in a place that's not industrial. So we would have to, it would come down to having to identify somewhere in West Ashley, an expansive amount of acres that could be zoned industrial and be blessed by county and or city.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Okay. 4C, financial incentives for Riverbend Charleston Properties LLC. What is the pleasure? Moved by Ms. Honeycutt. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item 5 is EMS fee ordinance amendment. What is the pleasure?
I move for approval of it.
Moved by Ms. Honeycutt, second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we are going to move into a special county council meeting. Salisbury Freedom of Information Act.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to media and persons requesting notification.
Okay, item 2 is Public Works Committee recommendation, first reading. It's a Kiowa River Development. What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second by Ms. Honeycutt, moved by Mr. Moody. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? One nay. Reverend Middleton, ayes have it. Mr. Salisbury, first reading.
An ordinance amending the Kiowa River Development Agreement, Johns Island, South Carolina, by and among Kiowa River Investment LLC and Charleston County, South Carolina.
Okay, item number 3 is came from our Finance
Move
Committee.
for committee recommendation. Can we approve all 4 at the same time, Madam Clerk?
Second.
You can just read them one at a time.
That'd be fine.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it.
I vote aye for B, C, and D, and I abstain from A until.
One abstention from A, Reverend Middleton. Okay, Ms. Salisbury, if you will read them one at a time.
Yes, sir. Okay. An ordinance providing for the levy of taxes for corporate purposes of Charleston County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, hereinafter referred to as fiscal year 2023, making appropriations from the general fund and other funds of Charleston County for such purposes, and further providing for the levy of taxes for the corporate purposes of Charleston County, including the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College for fiscal year 2023, providing for appropriation from such special funds created for the purposes of Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College in order to supply the necessary functions of the units, providing for budget control of the appropriations by the Charleston County Council and the County Administrator, making provisions for the fiscal affairs of Charleston County, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $25 million for Charleston County and up to $400,000 for the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District. B is an ordinance relating to the imposition of annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees for the disposition of solid waste and recycling, providing for classifications of real property subject to annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees, and establishing the amount of the annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees. 3C is an ordinance approving the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, and directing the auditor of Charleston County to levy the necessary millage and the treasurer to collect the taxes for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, the Cooper River Park and Playground Commission, the North Charleston District, the St. Andrews Parish Parks and Playground Commission, the St. John's Fire District, and the St. Paul's Fire District, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $3 million for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, up to $1,100,000 for the St. Andrews Parks and Playground Commission, and up to $1,500,000 for the St. John's Fire District. And 3D is an ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,200,000 fire protection service general obligation bonds on McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District of Charleston County, South Carolina, including a competitive bank loan procurement process to prescribe the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended, to provide for the payment thereof, to provide for the issuance of the general obligation bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds, and other matters relating thereto.
Okay, item 4 is 4A, B, and C. What is the pleasure?
Move to approve.
Moved by Reverend Middleton, second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. That completes our agenda for our special county council meeting. Anything else from council members before we adjourn? Mr. Swears.
Just one comment. I'd like to thank Kristen for the excellent work they do whenever we have a change in the agenda. I love now, and it's been going on for a year or two now, that y'all actually are very specific on what changed. There was a time where council members had to figure out what changed, but y'all do a beautiful job now of articulating exactly what has changed on the agenda, so we don't have to fish through to figure out what it was, and I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right, so I got a couple of things before we leave today. The land planner for 995 Morrison Drive, did we ever get that RFP out on the street? Can somebody answer that question?
Yes, sir. It was put out this afternoon at 3 p.m.
All right, so how many days is that put out for, sir?
35 days.
All right, so we should have something in 35 days. Okay? The 18 scattered sites that we were talking about. All right, I know we need construction to start on some of those sites. Did we get an assessment on what all sites need to be repaired?
Okay.
Who can answer that?
We'll let the director of community
All right,
development.
come right before the mic, please. I need to know for you, yeah.
Got any cost yet. We're presenting the plan at the next committee meeting for approval. Once we get that, we'll start looking at our nonprofits to come forward. They'll be the ones, if you approve the plan, they'll be the ones that will be getting the contractors to help with it.
Well, let me ask you this question. Maybe you can answer it, or Christine or somebody else, or Mr. Tarver can answer this question. So if we got these 18 scattered sites, and we got folks on our, on the procurement side that does these kind of stuff, like that's on a list we pick from, right? So why can't we, maybe partner up with some of these folks who doesn't get the bigger job and see about having they doing these smaller jobs, or either give it to one person and then move out? Can you say anything on that, Mr. Talbot?
We could do that, sir.
Yeah, because, these folks wait all year long, and sometimes they don't get work with the bigger companies. So, they'd have to be licensed and bonded, but I think we'd get the work done a whole lot faster and probably a whole lot less.
That is part of the plan. The plan
Okay.
has us using the DB&E group to help us recognize
Okay.
and identify the people
All right.
that can help us quickly.
And you'll have a plan at the next meeting.
We will.
Thank you, ma'am. That's so kind. All right, so this is from Mr. Davis. June 6th, we opened this stuff up May 6th. That was the deadline for these $25,000 small business applications, right? So where are we on awarding those now? Because the process closed on May the 6th, and this, Monday will be a month? So when are we going to get these funding out to these folks?
Those will be to the very next Finance Committee meeting and council meeting.
All right, so you will have that for us to vote on?
Yes.
Okay, so how many people do we have qualify? And how many applications we took? Can you tell me that, or you want to email it to everybody? Yeah, come to the mic. If you don't know, you can email it to everybody, or email it to me if you don't know, because I don't want to put nobody on the spot.
I can email it to you. We have the number of, I don't know them off the top of my head, but we have the number of applications that came in. We have the ones that were not eligible. We have why they were not eligible and the total amount. So I can
I just need to
email that.
know, the qualifications and, how many applied. I don't need to know for
Okay.
that purpose why they weren't. That's, not unless somebody else. So anybody else want to know? I don't need to know that.
I'd like to know how many applied and how many we turned down.
That's all. That's what I want. That's
Okay.
all I want.
Yeah, we can send that right away.
Not just to him.
All right, that's for everybody. Okay.
Yes.
May I clarify one point?
Yes, ma'am.
Council will actually consider what the recommendation of the department will be. So no determinations of disqualification, I guess, have been determined yet, because council will vote. Staff will bring forward the recommendations based on the staff and contract review. So we haven't actually
But
notified.
they have already pre-qualified by filling out the applications and meeting the requirements.
And then the final recommendation will come to council, but council, these organizations have not been told they've been disqualified because council has not yet voted.
Yeah. So we have to vote to disqualify them?
You will vote to award based on the recommendation, and then by virtue of that, we will act to notify everyone after that fact, just like we do with any kind of
Okay,
awards
all
like
right.
this.
Yeah, so you'll notify them. Okay, all right. So when is our next committee meeting, then?
June 16th? June 16th.
When do we got another council meeting? So we don't have another council
After
meeting?
that, the 21st?
No,
We've got
this
one this
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Can you have that information Tuesday?
Yes.
All right. Could you put a special finance committee meeting on Tuesday? So we can, so she gonna mail it out, we'll have that information for Tuesday.
I have a question.
Mr. Werman?
Yeah, Chairman, I guess now that you've started this discussion and jogged my memory, I have a question along those lines, I guess. I know that we allocated some ARPA funds on Mr. Darby's request. And I think the idea was, we're allocating these funds, but we would like the program to sort of be built around that allocation. Is there sort of an update that we can expect as far as what that program would look like?
There are going to be a number of agenda items on June 16th. They include basically everything you all have already asked about. The yellow sheets have already been done. I do want to clarify one thing that Ms. Sullivan said. The proposal that's coming for the 18 houses will not be for all 18. It will be for a couple of them. We have met with a number of organizations that have given us input on how to go about doing that. What you will also be receiving in total for the plan, the three-phase plan is the emergency rehab plan. So just to clarify that for the
Yeah,
record.
because I don't want to include these 18 houses in the rehab plan, because
Right.
that's separate
Exactly.
inside.
They are separate. We
Right.
have, I think, 4 or 5 different yellow sheets going through the process
All
right
right.
now.
And Mr. Werman, I'm going to ask you this question, and you can, maybe talk about this on the 16th. You were interested in moving some money aside out of ARPA for housing issues, maybe loan fund or community loan fund or something. I think you know how to best specify it. So are you willing, you want to talk about that on the 16th as well, too?
Yeah, we can talk about that on the 16th. I think, and I haven't spoken with staff about it, this is maybe just an item for thought is, I'd wondered, we've talked about one of the issues with doing what has traditionally been sort of conceptualized as a loan fund is with the ARPA money, obviously getting it allocated towards a specific project. I'd wondered if it was for land acquisition, would that count? And if that might be a way of getting something rolling that could use ARPA funds. If land purchases, if land purchases would in fact sort of get us over that hurdle, then the idea that I've been sort of bouncing in my head would be that, obviously that would presumably take less time than getting something fully developed and getting a development plan in place.
Yes, sir. And I believe it is next week that the housing consultant will be here to work with the housing steering committee, because land acquisition, of course, is an element of how we will address the affordable housing. And so they are meeting with the steering committee next week. They have not yet made any recommendations to council on where and how land should be acquired. There's not been any action on that yet. So we don't currently have a structure on what we would recommend to staff, but we can certainly look at the ARPA language to see if we could purchase land, if the county could purchase land for this purpose.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Werman's point, I don't think that would preclude us from, at least setting those funds aside for the purchase of land, contingent upon what the consultants would recommend, but we don't have to wait for their recommendation in order to set those funds aside.
Mr. Werman, that'll come out on the 16th.
I would tend to agree with that. And again, would maybe like to get at least a little bit of an idea as far as the legality of sort of the general purpose of what I'm kind of trying to think of here. But yes, would fully agree that we could do something very much like the emergency rehab, where we say, look, we have a general idea what we want to do with this. Let's set that aside sort of tentatively.
And I remember early reading through all the federal regulations and looking at other municipalities, areas that have local governments that have used these funds literally to purchase land. And so I don't know what makes Charleston County so different and how we have to research these things when everybody around America, they're doing it now.
But we'll do that on the 16th. We'll talk about that on the 16th
Yeah.
and have all the answers. And I do agree, Mount Pleasant and all these other entities have been buying up land for parks and all these other stuff. So we'll talk about it on the 16th. Again, Lord, delay is coming and we all be living. Anything else before this body? Meeting adjourned.